Good morning. I am Anandha Lakshmi, Assistant Professor of English, SFR College for Women, Sivakasi. This session is a simple introduction of Katherine Mansfield's A Cup of Tea, which is a short story which analyzes a one-day event in the life of Rosemary. Katherine Mansfield, who lived only for 32 years, has produced so many short stories, and her original name is Kathleen Mansfield Boucher. She is a short story writer, a poet, and a reviewer. Her Cup of Tea, which was written on 1922, is written within 4 to 5 days and was published in the Storyteller on May 1922. The story focused on the intersection of prosperity and adversity, class and gender issues, which was explicitly proved through her characters. The objectives of the story is to discuss the bohemian and creative life of Katherine Mansfield. She doesn't belong to any social norms, and which was reflected in her cup of tea. She explores the issues of class and gender in the story, and the story is to understand the omniscient point of view of upper class generosity, which is reflected by her heroine Rosemary. The story is to develop human relationships and generosity for the needy people, and the readers comes to a conclusion of proving themselves more humane through their deeds and not by their words. The characters in the story are Rosemary Fell, who is a protagonist, and she is the heroine, who is very rich. The next character is Miss Smith, the antagonist. She is not a villain, but a contrasting character to our heroine Rosemary. Third character is Rosemary's husband Philip, who is a very rich aristocratic man. We are introduced to normal people like the flower shop girl, the antique shop salesman, the footman, the maid servant, and who are important in carrying the story to the next level. There is no age specification for any character in the story, but we are shown that Rosemary Fell is a young girl who is more conscious of her beauty. The locations of the story is an antique shop and Rosemary's house, where she offers the poor girl a cup of tea. The time is very cold winter morning. Rosemary Fell, she is a really rich woman who is young, brilliant, extremely modern, and exquisitely well dressed. She was amazingly educated woman and really interested in parties and fashion shopping. She is married to Philip for 2 years. She was adored by her husband for her beauty, and she is a lover of flowers, antiquities, and showing herself to be a generous woman is the only thing she did in this story. She doesn't follow any conventional norms, and she has the habit of smoking cigarette, drinking brandy, and everything is portrayed in this story. She has a well-furnished house, servants, car, traveling buses, and shopping capacity to buy anything as per her wish. And the contradictory character, Miss Smith, is shown as a poor, sweet woman who is very young, thin, dark, and shadowy. Since it's a winter season, she is shying and sobbing for her poverty, and she is in need of a cup of tea. She was very nervous, stammering and frightened when she was took to the aristocratic home by Rosemary. She feels like fainting even due to hunger, and she begs to Rosemary for some money to to buy a cup of tea. She is brought to home by Rosemary, and she is dismissed easily by Rosemary for her beauty. The other characters, especially Philip Fell, who is the husband of Rosemary Fell, he being an aristocratic man, disliked the poor, and he uses words like, "It's a beastly afternoon." She is astonishingly pretty to kindle the jealous of Rosemary Fell. She even praises Miss Smith, saying, "Absolutely lovely, bowled well over," to express his appreciation of her beauty. The flower shop girl, who is a seller is also a character, and Rosemary shows her richness by buying a number of bouquets in her shop. Then the next antique shop salesman is also a flattering man to flatter Rosemary and to make her to buy a number of antique things. The footman, the maidservant are in Rosemary's bungalow, and they helped to continue the story without any. The next human relationships are shown here are, then the summary of the story. A cup of tea is about the protagonist, Rosemary Fell, who is a wealthy woman. However, she is not the kind to be considered beautiful. Rosemary has been married for 2 years to a very rich man, Philip Fell. Rosemary lives a luxurious life, shopping at high-end shops and buying anything she desires. Once she visits an antique shop, the shopkeeper is very fond of her and seems to flatter her with his words. He shows her a shiny, small velvet box that is very beautiful. Rosemary is very pleased, but knowing the price to be very costly, she decides not to buy it and asks the shopkeeper to save it for her. Outside the shop, it's raining, it's winter season, and Rosemary is very upset that she can't buy the box now. She is approached by a timid-looking girl who asks her for money to get a cup of tea. Rosemary thinks such things happen in books and stories, and thus she decides to take the girl with her to home. She wants to show the poor girl that rich people too feel sympathy for her poverty. The girl is very shocked to receive such treatment. She is afraid at first, but agrees to go with her. Rosemary thinks about boasting about this in front of her friends. At her house, Rosemary takes the girl up to her bedroom and makes her sit near the fire on a comfortable chair. She helps the girl take off her coat and hat but drops them on the floor. The poor girl cries that life is too hard and she is very tired to carry on her wishes to end her life. Rosemary consoles her and orders her tea. The girl is served with tea and some food. Rosemary lights up a cigarette while the girl eats. After the girl has eaten some food, she appears to relieve herself from tension. Rosemary starts to ask her about her life, but she is interrupted by her husband's arrival. Philip is astonished to see the girl in his wife's room, and he asks the girl's name. She says it is Smith, who was very poor, and she has offered her a cup of tea. Phillips then asks Rosemary to join him in the library to talk in private. Phillips inquires about the girl, and Rosemary explains her philanthropic plans. Philip says that it is absurd to keep a stranger in the house like this, but Rosemary is keen on her mission. Then Philip mentions that the girl is very lovely and pretty. This makes Rosemary insecure. Rosemary leaves the library and picks up some money to give the poor Miss Smith. She then asks her to leave. After Miss Smith leaves, Rosemary dresses up nicely, makes her hair look nice, and wears her pearls. She joins her husband back in the library and lies that Miss Smith insisted on leaving. She sits on her knees and asks him whether he likes her. He assures her that he likes her a lot. She then asks if she can buy the shiny velvet box from the antique store. Phillips agrees, but that was not what she wanted to ask him. After a pause, she questions, "Am I pretty?" There ends the story with the jealous question of Rosemary. The story brings the relationships between a husband and wife, which is fragile and vulnerable. The seller and the buyer in the story, that is the shopkeeper and Rosemary, flatters each other and attempts to satisfy their ego, and the character Rosemary also flatters her husband to get into his good book. The relationship between a rich woman and a poor woman is shown in the story through Rosemary and Miss Smith, who wants to please herself by taking Miss Smith to her house. Human beings suffer a sense of incompleteness in their life, which they try to complete by doing several things. And this is reflected in the story through the character of Rosemary, who, though being rich, is not satisfied with her status, and she involves herself in buying expensive antiques from the antique shop, which is so expensive, and making the pose of helping other people, which in her heart is not willing. Reflections of life through the story is a rich woman buys a cup of tea for a poor woman. This is normal for everyone to buy something for the poor, but the intention behind the buying of tea doesn't has any human sense but to show her richness. One keeps the other materially satisfied but humanly ignores the other as an object without consideration, just like Rosemary treating Miss Smith without any consideration for her future. A cup of tea is not equal to a cup of kindness, which is done by one person to another as a human being. An interrogation of the persistent class and gender questions are aroused in every human, like, am I pretty? Am I educated? Am I respected? Am I free in my life to express my thoughts and ideas? Am I a dignified being in my own eyes and in those of others, to satisfy our own ego? And this gets reflected in the character of Rosemary. The takeaways from this story needs vary from person to person. And we have to help people in times of need, but we should not put people into trouble in the name of help. We should develop a sense of self-esteem on our own while doing social help or doing any social work. Basically, we are always insecure in some way or other when our ego doesn't satisfy, when we help others, in the sense we self-conscious of our deeds. We are vulnerable to manipulate our own words and actions, which should be prevented. And this is the concept or the takeaway which is reflected in the short story A Cup of Tea by Katherine Mansfield. Thank you for the session.